By the time Margot Hale understood what she wanted, it no longer felt like winning. It felt like finally telling the truth and surviving the sound of it. Sunday morning came through Celeste's curtains in pale, quiet layers. Soft Boston morning, gray at the edges, slipping across the floorboards and touching the side of the bed where Margot lay awake with one hand tucked under her cheek. Celeste was still asleep beside her. That was the first thing Margot noticed. Not gone. Not already dressed. Not a note on the pillow or a message sent later with beautiful words and no useful presents. There. One arm folded beneath the pillow, hair loose across her cheek, breathing slow and even. In sleep, Celeste looked less untouchable. More private. The kind of privacy Margot did not want to disturb. So she stayed still. The apartment had the kind of quiet that belonged only to early Sunday. Not empty, not still, just unhurried. Pale light rested on the edge of Celeste's dresser. The blanket had slipped halfway to Margot's waist. Somewhere in the kitchen, the coffee machine gave one soft click, then silence returned, warm and domestic and almost too intimate to name. Margot had not meant to stay again. Not because she had not wanted to. Because wanting had become complicated enough without making a habit of waking up in Celeste Rowan's bed with her heart doing unreasonable things before coffee. But Saturday had become dinner. Dinner had become a walk by the water in coats buttoned against the wind. The walk had become Celeste's apartment. And the apartment had become the kind of quiet Margot no longer knew how to leave. She watched Celeste sleep for another second, then looked toward the chair where her sweater lay folded, not thrown. Celeste must have folded it sometime before they fell asleep. The gesture was so small Margot almost laughed. Celeste handled tenderness like a practical task. No ceremony. No announcement. Just care, placed where it could be found. Margot turned onto her back and stared at the ceiling. Her phone was on the nightstand. Face down. It had been face down all night. That felt like an achievement and an accusation at the same time. She reached for it before she could turn the decision into philosophy. 3 messages. One from Nora about a venue hold. One from her daughter, a photo of a cafeteria muffin captioned, "Is this food or architecture?" And one from Sloane, sent at 11:42 p.m. "Sloane, can we talk?" Margot's chest tightened. No clever opening. No fire. No hook hidden in a joke. Just 3 words. Celeste stirred beside her. Margot put the phone down and looked over. Celeste's eyes opened slowly. She blinked once, then focused on Margot. "Morning," Celeste said, voice low from sleep. "Morning." Celeste looked at her face. Not the phone. Her face. That was the problem with women who paid attention. They made avoidance inefficient. "You saw something," Celeste said. Margot exhaled softly. "Yes." Celeste did not ask immediately. She shifted onto her side, propping her head on one hand. The sheet fell over one shoulder. The morning light caught the silver near her temple. Margot's body, apparently uninterested in the emotional seriousness of the moment, noticed. Celeste noticed Margot noticing. A small smile touched her mouth, then faded, gently. "Sloane," she asked. Margot closed her eyes for half a second. "Yes." Celeste nodded. No surprise. No resentment. That almost made it worse. "She wants to talk," Margot said. I assumed she might. Margot turned her head toward her. "Did you?" "I'm not psychic. I just have eyes." Margot gave a small, unwilling laugh. Celeste reached under the sheet and found her hand. Not dramatic. Not possessive. Just there. "What do you want to do?" she asked. Margot looked at their joined hands. No one had asked her that when they did not already know the answer they preferred. "I think I need to talk to her," Margot said. Celeste's fingers stayed around hers. No tightening. No pulling away. "You probably do." Margot looked at her. Celeste held her gaze, but there was something underneath the calm now. A flicker. Not fear exactly. Something more adult and therefore more difficult. The knowledge that giving someone room did not mean it cost nothing. I don't want to hurt you, Margot said. Celeste's mouth curved without humor. A generous ambition. Rarely fully available. Celeste. I know. Celeste's thumb moved once over her hand. I gave you space because I meant it. It doesn't mean I enjoyed waiting. The honesty moved through Margot with a clean ache. There. Not the perfect woman. Not the unbothered woman. A woman who wanted her. A woman who had enough discipline not to turn that wanting into pressure, but not so much distance that it meant nothing. Margot lifted Celeste's hand and kissed her knuckles. Celeste watched her do it, and for once, the warmth in her eyes slipped past her restraint. I don't want to go backward, Margot said. Then don't. So simple. No, Celeste said. Just clear. Margot nodded. For a while, they lay there without speaking. Celeste did not ask what Margot would say to Sloane. Margot did not promise what the conversation would settle. That would have made the morning feel smaller than it was. Eventually, Celeste got up to make coffee. Margot watched her leave the room in a soft white shirt and dark lounge pants, hair loose, bare feet silent against the floor. The ache in Margot's chest shifted. It did not disappear. It made room for something else. Later that morning, Margot stood in Celeste's kitchen with a mug in both hands while Celeste leaned against the counter reading her daughter's muffin text with careful seriousness. It's structurally unsound, Celeste said. Margot looked at the photo. It's a muffin. That is exactly what it wants you to think. Margot laughed. A real laugh. Celeste looked pleased. Then Margot's phone buzzed again on the counter. Both women looked at it. Sloane, I don't want to do this by text. Margot set down her mug. Celeste looked at her for a second, then reached for her own coffee. I have a site visit at noon, she said. If you want time. Margot knew what she was doing. Offering space without making Margot ask for it. That nearly undid her again. Thank you, Margot said. Celeste nodded once. Come by later if you want. If I want. Celeste's eyes lifted. If you choose. The word landed differently. Not heavy. Important. Margot leaned across the counter and kissed her. It was meant to be brief. It did not stay that way. Celeste's hand came to the side of her face. Margot's eyes closed. The kitchen smelled like coffee and toast. The kiss was warm, slow, and far too easy to fall into for a woman who had an ending waiting somewhere else in the city. When Margot pulled back, Celeste's thumb brushed once along her cheek. I'll see you later, Margot said. Celeste's gaze held hers. Yes, she said. You will. Margot smiled. Then she left before the simple certainty of that sentence made her cry in someone else's kitchen. She met Sloane at 1:30 near the Common. Not inside a restaurant. Not at either apartment. Not anywhere with a sofa, a hallway, a bed, or old gravity. Neutral ground. A coffee kiosk sat near the edge of the park, steam rising from the small window every time it opened. People moved past in coats and scarves, walking dogs, carrying paper cups, pushing strollers, living lives that had no obligation to pause for Margot's grief. Sloane was already there. For once, she was early. She wore a black coat, dark sunglasses pushed up into her hair, and no visible armor except the usual beautiful posture of a woman trying not to look like she had been hurt. Margot stopped a few feet away. Sloane looked at her. The whole city seemed to go quiet around that look, though it did not. A child laughed nearby. A cyclist swore at someone under his breath. A coffee machine hissed. Sloane's eyes moved over Margot's face. You came, she said. You asked. Sloane nodded. They stood in line for coffee because there was nothing else to do with their hands. The ordinary procedure helped. 2 black coffees. No pastry. Sloane paid before Margot could. Margot let her. They walked without deciding where. Along the path near the bare trees, past benches still damp from the morning cold, past tourists taking photographs of statues without understanding who they were photographing. For a few minutes, neither of them spoke. Sloane held her coffee but did not drink it. Margot took one sip and burned her tongue. She welcomed the small, physical pain. Finally, Sloane said, "You stayed with her." Margot did not look at her. It was not a question. Yes. Sloane laughed once, under her breath. The sound was not cruel, just wounded. "You always were terrible at lying when you decided not to." Margot looked ahead. "I'm not trying to lie. I know." They reached a quieter stretch of path where the trees opened toward the street. Cars moved beyond the low iron fence. Across the road, old brick buildings stood in a row, windows catching pale light. Sloane stopped walking. Margot stopped too. For a second, Sloane looked younger than 32. Not in her face. In the uncertainty of her hands, the way she held the coffee cup too tightly, the way she seemed angry at herself for not knowing where to put all the feeling. "I was never nothing to you," Sloane said. Margot turned fully toward her. The pain in Sloane's voice did what anger never could. It entered without resistance. "No," Margot said quietly. "You were never nothing." Sloane's face tightened, but she did not look away. "That was the problem," Margot continued. "If you had been nothing, I could have walked away years ago. It wouldn't have lasted this long. It wouldn't hurt like this." Sloane's mouth trembled once. Almost too quickly to see. Margot saw it anyway. "You were important," Margot said. "You are important." Sloane looked down. Margot swallowed. "But I can't keep living on fragments of something that almost feels like a life." The words hung between them in the cold air. Sloane blinked, slow and hard. Then she nodded once, but not because she agreed. Because the words had landed somewhere she could not immediately fight. "I thought wanting you this much meant something," Sloane said. "It did. Not enough, apparently." Margot flinched. Sloane saw it. She looked away sharply, then back. "I'm sorry," Sloane said. The apology surprised both of them. Margot could see it in her face. Sloane had not planned to say it. That made it matter more. "I didn't mean it like that," Sloane said. "Yes, you did." Sloane's mouth twisted. Margot's voice softened. "But I know what you meant underneath it." Sloane looked at her for a long moment. The wind moved through the trees. Somewhere behind them, a dog barked twice, then went quiet. "I still don't know how to be what you want," Sloane said. Margot's throat tightened. "I know. I hate that you know." "I do too." Sloane looked at her then, directly. No playfulness left. No performance. No attempt to turn the conversation toward heat, because heat had always been the easiest road back. "You think she does?" Sloane asked. Margot was quiet. Then, carefully, "I think she wants to try in the same direction I do." Sloane closed her eyes. The sentence hurt her. Margot hated that. She hated that there was no way to tell the truth gently enough to make it painless. When Sloane opened her eyes again, they were bright. "Does she make you happy?" Margot almost answered too quickly, then did not. Because Sloane deserved more than speed. "I don't know yet," she said. "But I feel present with her." Sloane let out a breath that could almost have been a laugh. "God, that sounds mature." Margot's mouth trembled. "It's annoying." "It is." For a moment, something like their old humor stood between them. Thin. Tender. Not enough to return to. Sloane took one sip of coffee and made a face. "This is terrible." "It is. You chose this place? You paid. That was generous of me. You've always had moments." Sloane looked at her. The joke faded, but not sadly. Softly. "I did, didn't I?" Margot smiled through the ache. "Yes." Sloane's eyes moved over her face one last time. Not like she wanted to claim her now. Like she wanted to remember. "I am going to miss you," Sloane said. Margot's chest tightened so sharply she had to look away. "I'm going to miss you too." No, Sloane's voice broke a little. "You're not supposed to say it back." Margot looked at her. "I'm not leaving because I stopped feeling," she said. "I'm leaving because feeling wasn't enough to build on." Sloane nodded. She looked toward the street for a moment, blinking too quickly. Then she turned back and stepped closer. Margot knew she should not. Or maybe she knew this was the last should not that deserved gentleness instead of discipline. She closed the distance first. Not much. Enough. Sloane looked at her face, searching for permission. Margot gave it without words. She leaned in and kissed Sloane's cheek. Not a quick kiss. Not the polite brush of social goodbye. A slow kiss pressed to warm skin, lingering long enough to hold the years between them, the nights, the laughter, the mistakes that were not entirely mistakes, the heat that had been real, the mornings that had not been enough. Sloane closed her eyes. Margot pulled back just enough to speak. Goodbye, Sloane. Sloane opened her eyes. The look she gave Margot was so intense it felt almost like being touched. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Sloane leaned in. Her mouth did not go to Margot's lips. It went to her neck. Slowly, carefully. The kiss landed just below Margot's jaw, warm and unbearably familiar. Sloane stayed there for one breath, too, as if she were taking in the scent of Margot's skin one last time, committing something private to memory before letting it go. Margot's eyes closed. She felt the ache move through both of them. Then Sloane drew back. Goodbye, Margot, she said. Her voice was steady. Almost. Then she turned and walked away. Margot did not follow. She stood beside the path with bad coffee cooling in her hand and watched Sloane cross toward the street. Sloane's black coat moved in the wind. At the curb, she waited for traffic, then crossed when the light changed. Halfway across, she looked back. Not hopefully, not dramatically, just once. Her mouth curved into a sad smile. Margot's heart broke in a clean, quiet way. She smiled back. A small smile. A grateful one. A goodbye one. Sloane nodded, almost imperceptibly, then turned and continued down the opposite sidewalk until the city took her back. Only after she was gone did one tear slip down Margot's cheek. One. Warm against the cold air. Margot did not wipe it away immediately. She let it fall. Then she threw the coffee into the nearest bin, put her hands in her coat pockets, and walked in the other direction. The rest of the day passed without becoming easier. That was fine. Margot did not need easy. She needed true. She answered emails, called her daughter, listened to a 15-minute speech about how one roommate believed labeling food in the fridge was hostile energy. Margot agreed labeling was sometimes a necessary form of civilization. Her daughter said college had taught her that civilization was fragile. Margot laughed. For a while, she felt normal. Then, while waiting for water to boil, she touched the place on her neck where Sloane had kissed her and stood still for longer than the kettle required. That night, she did not go to Celeste. She texted instead, we talked. Celeste did not answer immediately. Margot appreciated that more than she expected. When the reply came, it was simple. Are you all right? Margot looked at the message. Not entirely. Do you want company or space? Margot closed her eyes. There were people who asked questions like traps. There were people who asked questions like gifts. Margot typed, space tonight. Company tomorrow? Yes. Then, I'm proud of you if that's not too obnoxious. Margot smiled a little painfully. It's very obnoxious. I'll recover. The next evening, Margot went by Celeste's studio at 6:30. The day had turned dark early, the windows along the street glowing warm against the cold. Rowan Restoration looked different from outside at night. Lamps inside. Movement behind the glass. Shelves and tables becoming shapes in amber light. A studio alive at the end of a workday. Margot paused before entering. Not because she was uncertain. Because something about arriving here felt different now. Not like chasing or hiding. Like showing up. She opened the door. Elise looked up from the front table and smiled. Hi, Margot. The ease of being recognized hit Margot with unexpected force. Hi, Elise. She's on a call, but she said if you came in, I'm supposed to pretend we're all extremely composed and not behind schedule. Very convincing so far. Elise grinned. Thank you. Margot walked farther inside. Celeste was in her office behind the glass wall, phone at her ear, one hand on her hip, the other holding a pencil she seemed to have forgotten was there. She wore black trousers and a soft gray sweater, sleeves pushed up, hair pinned loosely in a way that had probably started neat and lost the argument with the day. She looked up, saw Margot, and smiled. Not the polite smile of a woman greeting a guest. Not even the restrained smile from the cafe. This one arrived before she managed it. Margot felt it land in her chest. Celeste said something into the phone, nodded, listened, then made a gesture toward the small sofa near the bookshelves. Margot sat. She did not check her phone. She watched the studio instead. A junior designer rolled plans into a tube. Someone labeled stone samples. Elise argued quietly with the printer. The place moved around Margot without trying to impress her. Work. Real work. The end-of-day mess of people making something. Margot liked waiting there. That surprised her. She had spent years waiting in event spaces, hotel lobbies, donor rooms, back corridors, car services, and restaurant bars. Waiting usually meant calculation. Timing. Control. What needed to happen next? This waiting felt different. It had somewhere to go. Celeste ended the call 5 minutes later and came out. "Hi," she said. "Hi." Celeste looked at her face, and the smile softened. "How are you?" Margot did not answer automatically. "Sad," she said. Celeste nodded. And sure, that changed Celeste's expression. Not relief exactly. Something more careful. More moved. "Both can be true," Celeste said. "I'm learning." Celeste held out her hand. Margot took it. Margot wanted to. They left the studio 10 minutes later, after Celeste gave 3 instructions, rescued a sample from being mislabeled, and told Elise not to let anyone approve the walnut finish before morning. Outside, the city had gone cold and bright under streetlights. They walked to dinner instead of calling a car. Their hands brushed twice before Celeste simply took Margot's. No announcement. No question. Margot looked down at their joined hands. Then at Celeste. Celeste looked ahead, but her mouth curved. "Efficient," Margot said. "I'm known for it. You are known for historic restoration." Also hand-holding, apparently. Margot laughed. The sound felt lighter than it had in days. They had dinner at a small Italian place with warm windows and tables, close enough that every conversation became part of the wallpaper. Celeste ordered pasta and then stole a bite of Margot's roasted carrots without asking. Margot stared at her. Celeste chewed calmly. "Those are better. That was theft. That was assessment. I'm adding it to your character file. I hope it's otherwise flattering." Mixed. Celeste smiled. "Good. Accuracy matters." The evening did not erase the afternoon with Sloane. Margot did not want it to. Sloane deserved not to be erased. But the evening gave the grief somewhere gentle to sit. That was new. Later, in Celeste's apartment, they stood by the kitchen counter drinking tea because both of them had admitted coffee at that hour would be a threat to public safety. Celeste leaned against the counter. Margot stood close enough to touch but did not yet. The apartment was quiet around them, lamps low, the windows dark. A book lay open on the table. Celeste's coat hung beside Margot's at the door, sleeves nearly touching. Margot noticed that. Celeste noticed her noticing. "You're thinking again," she said. "I have a rich inner life. I've observed." Margot set down her mug. Celeste set hers beside it. The space between them changed. Not suddenly. Naturally. Margot stepped closer first. Celeste's gaze moved over her face, reading the movement, making sure. Margot felt that familiar warmth in her chest, not the old rush of being pulled under, but the steady heat of wanting and being allowed to remain herself inside it. She touched Celeste's waist. Celeste's breath shifted. The tiny crack in her composure still delighted Margot more than it probably should have. "You like that?" Celeste said. "What?" "Finding out I'm not as calm as you thought." Margot smiled. I like being accurate. Celeste's eyes darkened. Then she kissed her. This time, there was no urgency of first discovery. No grief at the door. No workday boiling over. No question of whether Margot was truly present. She was. The kiss unfolded slowly, then warmed by degrees. Margot's hands moved over Celeste's sweater, feeling the shape of her, the living warmth beneath. Celeste pulled her closer, and Margot went willingly, with the small relief of no longer dividing herself before crossing the room. Celeste's mouth moved to the corner of her jaw. Margot closed her eyes. There was desire here. Plenty of it. But it had learned her name in daylight. That made it different. Celeste guided her back against the counter, one hand at Margot's waist, the other brushing hair away from her face. The touch was intimate in its lack of hurry. Margot felt every second of it. The edge of the counter behind her. Celeste's body close. The softness of the sweater under her fingers. The warmth of breath against her throat. When Margot pulled her closer, Celeste came. No hesitation. No retreat into wisdom. No cool distance. She wanted. The wanting moved through her hands, her mouth. The way she pressed closer and then paused only long enough to let Margot choose the next breath. Margot chose it. Again and again. By the time they reached the bedroom, Margot was laughing softly because Celeste had stopped in the hallway to turn off a lamp. Really? Margot asked. Celeste looked back at her. I have standards. You are impossible. You keep coming back. Margot caught the front of her sweater and pulled her close. Yes, she said. I do. Celeste's expression changed. The playfulness gave way to something deeper. Margot kissed her before that depth could become too tender to survive. The night was not a repeat of Friday. It had its own shape. Less fragile. Warmer. There were pauses for laughter. Moments where Celeste murmured something against Margot's mouth that made Margot smile, and then forget the smile under the next kiss. Moments where Margot touched Celeste and felt her composure thin, felt the satisfaction of being wanted not as an interruption but as part of the evening's natural language. Later, they lay together beneath the blankets, the room dim and warm. Margot's head rested against Celeste's shoulder. Celeste's fingers moved slowly through her hair. Not to soothe her. Not exactly. Just because she could. Margot let her eyes close. For a while, neither spoke. Then Celeste said, "There's an empty drawer." Margot opened one eye. What? Celeste kept looking at the ceiling. In the dresser. Margot lifted her head and looked at her. Celeste's face was calm. Suspiciously calm. "There's an empty drawer," Celeste repeated. "If you want it." Margot stared at her, then pushed herself up onto one elbow. "That is very presumptuous." "No," Celeste said. "Practical. Practical. Yes. I stay over twice, and you offer me furniture? A drawer is not furniture. It's part of furniture. That distinction does not make this less presumptuous." Celeste turned her head, eyes warm. "Would you prefer a dramatic speech?" "Absolutely not." "Good. I didn't prepare one." Margot tried to maintain the proper level of indignation. Failed. A smile broke through. Celeste saw it and looked pleased with herself. "Only if you want it," Celeste said, softer now. There it was. The real sentence beneath the practical one. No demand. No trap. No fantasy pretending to be logistics. A place. Offered. Margot looked toward the dresser across the room. An ordinary piece of furniture. 3 drawers on one side. 3 on the other. One empty. It should not have made her throat tighten. It did. Because she understood the language now. Not keys. Not vows. Not forever spoken too soon. Just room. A small, concrete place inside Celeste's life where Margot could leave something and come back to find it still there. Margot lay back down slowly. "This is how you flirt?" she asked. Celeste's fingers returned to her hair. "Effectively, yes. It's very niche. And yet." Margot laughed softly against her shoulder. Celeste's hand stilled for 1 second, then continued. Margot felt the quiet of it settle around them. Not empty. Not silent. Full. A week passed. Then another. Not in magic. In ordinary pieces. Margot working late and finding a text from Celeste that said, I walked past your restaurant choice and judged the lighting from outside. Acceptable. Celeste sending a photograph of a restored fireplace with the message, this one has emotional range. Margot stopped by the studio on a Thursday evening and was handed a roll of drawings by Elise before anyone remembered she did not work there. Dinner after work. Coffee before meetings. A walk through the North End, where Celeste bought cannoli from the place she claimed was not the most famous but was the correct one. A Sunday morning in Margot's apartment, Celeste barefoot in her kitchen, reading the business section while Margot's daughter called and loudly demanded to know who was laughing in the background. Margot says, a friend. Her daughter says, you said that weird. Celeste silently laughed into her coffee. There were still hard moments. Of course there were. Margot thought of Sloane sometimes. A street corner. A perfume. A black coat moving through a crowd. The memory of a voice saying, you'll miss this when calm starts feeling like silence. Sometimes Margot did miss it. The fire. The danger. The way Sloane could make a room feel smaller, and her body feel incandescent. Missing it did not mean going back. That was another thing Margot learned slowly. A person could grieve something and still choose not to live inside it. Sloane did not disappear from the world. She existed across town, in rooms Margot no longer entered, probably beautiful, probably restless, probably laughing at something inappropriate and making someone feel like the center of gravity for one dangerous evening. Margot hoped she was all right. That hope hurt less with time. One Friday, almost a month after the gala, Margot went to Celeste's studio just before 6. The sky outside had turned the soft blue-gray of early evening. Office windows glowed. Traffic moved badly as usual. A thin wind slipped between buildings and tugged at Margot's scarf. Inside Rowan Restoration, the studio was nearly empty. Elise was putting on her coat. She's in the back, she said, pretending she's not still working. Convincing. Not even a little. Margot smiled. Good night, Elise. Good night. Margot found Celeste at the drafting table, sleeves pushed up, pencil behind one ear, studying a set of plans with the intensity of a woman personally offended by a wall. You look angry at paper, Margot said. Celeste did not look up. The paper knows what it did. Margot came closer. Are we still having dinner? Celeste finally looked at her. That smile again. The one that no longer surprised Margot and still affected her every time. Yes, Celeste said. Give me 2 minutes. You said that last time. And how long did I take? 11. I was building anticipation. You were arguing with Tile. Same thing. Margot took the pencil from behind Celeste's ear. Celeste's eyes narrowed. That was functional. That was a hostage. Margot set it on the table. Celeste looked at the pencil, then at her. You've become very bold in my workplace. I have a drawer now. Celeste's mouth curved slowly. Yes, she said. You do. The words changed the room. Not dramatically. They simply opened the door to everything they meant. Margot stepped closer. Celeste's gaze dropped to her mouth. 2 minutes. Margot asked. Celeste's voice lowered. Less. The kiss was brief because the studio door was unlocked, but not as brief as it should have been. Celeste's hand came to Margot's waist, and Margot's fingers brushed the side of her neck, and for a moment the plans, the lamps, the quiet studio, the waiting city all softened around them. When they pulled apart, Celeste looked mildly annoyed. Margot smiled. Problem? Yes. Now I want to leave. That was the idea. Manipulative. Efficient. Celeste laughed. She packed her things. They walked to dinner hand in hand. Not every step. Sometimes the sidewalk narrowed. Sometimes one of them needed to check traffic. Sometimes Celeste pointed out a terrible window replacement on a beautiful building, and Margot had to agree with appropriate outrage. But their hands found each other again without ceremony. After dinner, they returned to Celeste's apartment because Margot had left a sweater there, in the drawer. The first thing she had placed inside it had been practical: a sweater, a toothbrush, a pair of socks. Because Boston weather could not be trusted and Celeste's apartment had old floors. Then a book. Then a scarf. Then a small bottle of the moisturizer she pretended not to care about. Every item felt ordinary. Every item felt ridiculous. Every item stayed. That night, after they came in from the cold, Margot went to the bedroom to change into the sweater. She opened the drawer. Her things were there. Folded. Waiting. Not absorbed into Celeste's life. Not hidden. Given space inside it. Margot touched the edge of the sweater and stood still. From the doorway, Celeste said, "I can hear you thinking from here." Margot turned. Celeste leaned against the frame, arms folded, hair loose, eyes warm. Margot pulled out the sweater and held it against her chest. "So," she said, trying for casual and missing by a charming distance, "does this mean I can call you my girlfriend now?" Celeste's eyebrows lifted. A slow smile spread across her face. "Of course," she said. "You already have permission from my drawer." Margot stared at her, then laughed. Really laughed. The kind of laugh that started in her chest and broke free before she could make it elegant. Celeste laughed too, softer but no less real, and the room filled with it, warm, absurd, intimate. "You are unbearable," Margot said. "Accurate," Celeste replied. Margot crossed the room, still smiling, still holding the sweater, and kissed her. Slowly. Not because she needed proof. Not because she feared the moment would vanish. Because Celeste was there and Margot wanted her. Because the wanting had somewhere to live now. Celeste's arms came around her, and Margot leaned into her with the full weight of herself. The kiss deepened in the quiet doorway, tender and warm and certain enough to make Margot's chest ache. Not with grief this time. With something stronger. Something steady. Celeste pulled back just enough to look at her. "Girlfriend," she said, testing the word with amused seriousness. Margot smiled. "Yes. I can work with that. I should hope so. Your drawer approved me." Celeste laughed again, and Margot kissed the sound from her mouth. For a long while, they stood there in the doorway of the bedroom, the city dark beyond the windows, dinner still warm in their bodies, the drawer open behind them like a small, ordinary miracle. Margot did not think about whether this was peace instead of passion. It was not so neat. She felt the heat in Celeste's hands, the warmth in her own chest, the pull of a woman who wanted her and stayed long enough to want to become part of life. She had not chosen calm because she was tired of fire. She had chosen the woman who stayed when the fire became morning. Celeste brushed a thumb along Margot's cheek. Margot leaned into it. And for once, the thought that came to her was not careful. Not managed. Not edited for safety. Maybe this was happiness. Not the kind that arrived with music and certainty. Not the kind that fixed every ache behind her. Just this. A woman laughing softly in front of her. A drawer with room inside it. A kiss that did not have to end in leaving. And maybe Margot thought as she leaned in again, that was more than enough. If this finale stayed with you, please like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments which moment hit you most. Margot and Sloane's goodbye, Celeste offering the empty drawer, or Margot finally realizing what happiness might feel like. For those who want a little more time with these characters, I share extra audio scenes and bonus moments for her After Midnight Club members on Buy Me a Coffee. The link is in the description. Every bit of support helps me create more stories like this for you.